Shabbat Kodesh Pinchas. I would like to share with you this Erev Shabbat some thoughts that I shared with the community last night between Mincha and Meir, a talk about Shivasar B'Tammuz, which was outside of the shul and the entrance to the shul. And part of what I reflected on Shivasar B'Tammuz, I think meets our experiences these days and reflects them, and it also meets Parshat Shavua. So let's start. Okay, I would like to share with you some thoughts regarding Shivasar B'Tammuz, which according to Chazal, there were 5 events that occurred on Shivasar B'Tammuz, and 2 of them I want to reflect on. One is the Nishtabur Aluchot. Chet HaEgel was on this day, on Shivasar B'Tammuz, and the second was Batala Tamid, the Korban Tamid, which is sacrificed daily in Beit HaMikdash, which basically resembles the functioning of the Mikdash, the daily work. It was canceled on Shivasar B'Tammuz. And these 2 really touch 2 opposite, I would say, experiences, which for us today, they met each other. One is crisis, which is something which is unique, special, unusual. And the other one is the daily today work, life and work. And a reflection on both perhaps could help us look at the challenges we're going through these days. Let's start briefly with Chet HaEgel. Well, there's a real crisis there. Moshe Rabbeinu disappeared there in the desert. He's not coming back. And they look for an immediate solution. That's what they do. You know, the way the Psukim say, Vayara Am ki voshesh Moshe laredet min hahar. The people of Israel realize that Moshe Rabbeinu is late, and it confuses them. They're worried. They don't know what to do. And what do? Immediately, they seek for a solution. They go to Aaron, and they say, come and make us a god, because Moshe Rabbeinu disappeared. Now, in the words of the New Age, if you're familiar with their language, this approach is the approach which they call to do. When something goes wrong, immediately you have to do something. But as we know, their solution wasn't too effective. You don't replace Moshe Rabbeinu with a golden calf. And Chazal teach us that not everybody sinned at Chet HaEgel, because there's another way to face crisis. Chazal say that women did not sin in Chet HaEgel. Okay, the source for that is a medrash, which is quoted by Rashi in his commentary on Megillah, Chav Bet Amud Bet 22b, where Rashi there makes a statement that there's a special connection between women and Rosh Chodesh. Rashi brings there an opinion that women should not work on Rosh Chodesh. And he says the reason he heard from his teacher that they did not sin in Chet HaEgel. And then he quotes the following. There's the Bright and Reb Lezer, which says that the woman heard that Aaron HaKohen asked them to bring gold and their jewelry in order to build a golden calf. And they said to their husbands, but it's useless. I mean, you think you have to do something. You think we have to solve it. But the solution has to be effective. Just to do something for the sake of doing is meaningless. What you really have to learn, and returning to the language of the New Age, is also to be able to be. Not only to solve things, to do things, but to experience them as they are. The contrast between to do and to be is reflected here in the words of Rashi through gender. The men are more characterized as like to do things, and the women have more patience. Again, still being within the language of gender, the linkage to Rosh Chodesh perhaps also gives us a hint. Why is this so? Because Rosh Chodesh obviously which reflects a woman because of the monthly cycle, the ability to be adjusted to changes, to learn how to deal with changes that your body experiences, that you go through, is something which women excel much more than men. And also has to do with Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is there is light, there's no light. Within the darkness, you're able to realize it will take some time until the moon will fill in, but to have patience to wait for that. And what the Chet HaEgel is really reflecting to us, put aside gender, that many times when we have a crisis, we hope that we can solve it immediately. But we also have to realize that seeking for fast solutions may be many times useless. And what you really have to learn is something else. You have to learn how to live with a crisis, not to do, but to be. The truth is, the Chet HaEgel also puts a mirror on more questions, not only on the patience of the people of Israel, but also about leadership. How does leadership know how to deal with crisis? And we do see there two different models of leadership, which both have failed. One of them seems to be like more to do. And Chazal put in a figure which disappeared, doesn't really appear in the Psukim, and that is Hor. Hor is the son of Miriam. The reason they put him in is because when Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Mount Sinai, he turns to the people of Israel and he says, Aaron and Hor will be in charge while I'm away. But Hor disappears. And Chazal, adding to that a pasuk, which is a difficult pasuk, it says, Vayara Aaron vayiven mizbeach lefanav. Aaron saw, but it doesn't say in the accusative, what did he see? So Chazal say, you know what he saw? He saw what they did to Hor. In the words of Rashi, quotes it from the Medrash, Hor tried to stand against them and to fight them, and they killed him. So Aaron saw that it's useless to stand against them. That's what he saw. Vayara Aaron v'yemem mizbeach. I'll say it in Hebrew for those who can follow. He saw what they did to the mizbeach, to the zavuach. Zavuach means Hor, that they killed. And therefore, what did he say? I'll do something else. But the truth is that Aaron's model also failed. What was his model? Not really to deal directly with what has to be done, but more to gain time. Rashi there explains how Aaron didn't really want to build an altar and build the golden calf, but he said, bring the gold. He thought they won't bring it. And then he said, tomorrow they'll go to sleep, but in the meantime, Moshe Rabbeinu will come back. So this is not the time to give a full analysis of the prototypes of leadership in Chet HaEgel, but I would say that the questions that Chet HaEgel raises, I think definitely reflect many questions that many of us have these days looking at our leadership, while thinking that in the beginning of the corona, that they did wisely, realizing that things aren't going so well. And all of us, I think, are wishing that our leadership should have the right wisdom to make the right decisions, and also the courage to implement the right decisions. And courage here doesn't mean necessarily to close, because we're now in a time where we already left the one-time crisis. We're getting used to a new reality. Reality has changed. The corona is not going anywhere. And as long as there won't be developed a vaccination, which from what I realize regularly takes at least 1.5 years, because it has to be tested and it takes time, meaning we're now going into a new reality. And therefore, the wisdom of our leadership has to be to think of daily life. I'm speaking mostly about the economical implications of their policy, meaning we know that distancing one from the other is a very effective way to fight pandemics. But on the other hand, people are losing their jobs. Some of them don't have money. They don't have salaries for months. There are many fields in the economy which aren't functioning. And obviously, we're expecting leadership to have a broad perspective of how to balance between protecting us from spreading a virus and how also to enable people to make a living. And this needs a lot of patience, a lot of wisdom, a lot of courage. And we're not the leaders of the state, but we do have our personal responsibility to do the best each one of us can do in order to prevent the spread of the virus, which means social distancing, means a mask, means hygiene. And all of these, they may not be comfortable, but this is what we have to adjust to. And this meets the second event of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the importance of routine, of daily life, of tamid. What Chazal really say is that Beit HaMikdash is not only a building. And Beit HaMikdash did not only being burned on the 9th day of Av. It started before. Why? Why did the Churban happen gradually? Because the Mikdash has to have the sacrifices. And the Korban HaTamid really resembles the daily functioning of the Mikdash. A Mikdash with the two sacrifices of the morning and the late afternoon, in the evening. That Mikdash is functioning. It's linked to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. But a building which has no sacrifices, something is affected there. And what we really learn from these words of Chazal, that you have to mourn the loss of the Tamid, of the routine, is how important routine is. Now this meets a very unusual pasuk in our parasha, which I'm sure many are familiar with because it appears in the laning of Rosh Chodesh. But on the other hand, it's a pasuk which is really overwhelming. And I mean to the pasuk, Olat Tamid ha'asuya b'har Sinai l'reach nichoach ishel Adonai. Meaning when the Torah describes the daily sacrifices of the Tamid, it refers to some mysterious sacrifice which was at the Mount of Sinai. Now what is this mysterious sacrifice from Mount Sinai to the Tamid, to the daily sacrifice? So Rashi says a very beautiful idea. Rashi says that it hints to the first sacrifices when they build the Mishkan. Obviously, you realize there's a problem here because it says Mount Sinai, not Mishkan. But we have to know an idea the Ramban taught us that the Mishkan is a continuation of the revelation of Har Sinai. And what basically the lesson that they're teaching us is that I'm sure everybody's overwhelmed from the first sacrifice. Everybody was overwhelmed from the days of the Miluim when they opened the Mishkan. But daily routine bores many people. People lose their excitement over it. But the truth is that people who are able to have a meaningful routine means that this thing that they make routinely part of their life is something which is really important for them. And Chazal teach us that about Talmud Torah. The Talmud Torah has to be keva, meaning you have to learn every day. And the same is true about prayers. Prayers, people who pray daily, people who go to shul daily, they have a constant conversation with God. Shul, davening, worship of God is part of their lives. And what the pasuk is really wishing us, that this daily routine, we should feel that it's rooted in the big experience of Har Sinai, meaning it should always be something that we strive for, that we're overwhelmed by, that we love. In the words of the Rashar Hirsch, okay, Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch, I have the Hebrew translation, so I'll translate it for you to English. He says that the altar in the Mishkan, which has the fire of the Mizbeach, it resembles Har Sinai, which had fire on its head too. And he says the Korban HaTamid is like a constant continuation. It's like an echo to the words of Naseh V'Nishma. And all of you know how our shul is based upon routine, daily prayers, and daily learning Torah. And these days of fighting the coronavirus challenge us very much on our daily lives, but also on how do we run a shul in these days. Basically, if we put together the two events of the Chet HaEgel and the Batal HaTamid, meaning the importance of the routine together with how do you deal with crisis, the challenge that we really have these days is how do you build a routine in a world of crisis, which is going nowhere. You have to build a new routine. And if I really thought, and I mentioned it to you, in the first days of the fighting the coronavirus, that we should close and that we have to stop life. This apparently no more is the right way to live because it's going on for so long. As I mentioned before, closing down means that there will be such an economical crisis, which that itself will be a catastrophe. It's already a catastrophe, it will be much worse. And basically our whole lives now are going towards a tamid, a routine, which is run within crisis. And I really believe that our efforts today should be to, on the one hand, to fight, to continue our routines, which we believe in, that they're important. Remember, these routines come from the excitement of Har Sinai, our shul. On the other hand, we have to be very cautious. And that's why we're very careful in shul to keep all the regulations. We're very careful that everybody in shul should wear a mask on their nose too. I have transferred now the shiurim between Mincha and Mariv outside because it's safer over there. It also gives a break between Mincha and Mariv so we don't stay for a straight 45 minutes inside. And the truth is, it's not really clear what's the right thing to do. Because on the one hand, we have to be very careful. On the other hand, we also have to fight for routine. And I must say that limiting shuls to 19 people is really a blow for the routine of shul. It's very hard to run a community when you're limited to 19 people. But we accept this gzerah because we realize this is what's necessary. But really, we're very much challenged by how to run the shul these days. And there's perhaps no one right way of doing it. There are many ways, and we can't say this is right or this is wrong. I do want to present before you my position. I'm not in the Va'ad of the shul, and eventually the decisions were made by the Va'ad. But I am sure that they're aware of the broad picture of the values of our shul, and that's what I want to point out to you. On the one hand, as I mentioned before, to be very careful. On the other hand, we don't want the tamid to be canceled. And I'm glad that during the week, it's still possible, unfortunately, because not many people come to shul, okay? But it was possible to run the minyanim. And also we have the ability of splitting. That's what we did. Like, for example, yesterday, we saw there are more than 19 people cooperated, we split, some went downstairs. But you are realized that on Shabbat, it's not possible really to run a shul with limited to 19 people. And there are many different options of what to do. Eventually, the Va'ad felt that it'll be very hard to have a long davening tomorrow, limited to 19 people and controlling it. And therefore, they decided that we will daven outside of the shul. And I want to share with you how I view this. I wasn't part of the group that made the decision, but I want to tell you how I experienced this. And I'm asking you to consider to experience it yourselves the same way. That davening next to the shul is still running. It's not that we closed the shul. Just we're running the shul in a more careful way. And we will be very careful on the one hand to protect each other's, but we'll also fight for being able to continue praying. And I hope that we will have the wisdom and the responsibility and the patience really to be cautious, but together also to keep functioning. And the Bezrat Hashem, our Tamid will not be canceled. And Bezrat Hashem, we will find ways to have the patience and the responsibility to building a new routine within these days of crisis. And I hope Bezrat Hashem that Kadosh Baruch Hu will see our prayer, listen to our prayers, see that we are doing the best that we can, and have His mercy on us. I'm sure that many of you yesterday in Avinu Malkeinu had a lot of kavana in Mena Magefa Minachalatecha. But I want to tell you, I also had a lot of kavana with Zochreinu Leparnasa V'Chalkala. And we have mutual responsibility to try to help each other, especially those who have been hurt by this crisis. That's why this is also time for brotherhood, for buying local, for if you need something, try to give it to somebody who you know that needs the work more. And Bezrat Hashem, we should be well. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom and Kol Tuv. Be well.